I'm pretty sure that I don't need to remind you guys about the poor state of the mainstream media as of late. But I have seen a lot of shit go down with how they act when they are constantly exposed and deframed because of what they dish out. Yellow journalism, fake news, misinformation, that sort of thing. Which is kind of funny because they actually do the same thing. Because I mean, I know that this story was actually definitely big back in 2017, but I recall a small group actually secretly videotaping a few members of CNN and Van Jones, who basically said that the Russian investigation is just a nothing burger. That all proved that the entire Russian investigation, all this nonsense about Russia collusion, was just a means to deframe Trump, to slander the president, and to stop a lot of his policy. And this mindset is continuing on even right now. After North Korea managed to finally hold a summit with the United States president in Singapore, which, by the way, it was pretty well successful. We got a statement, we got a call for denuclearization, that sort of thing, and it was definitely a big win for Donald Trump. But the media doesn't like this. In fact, they constantly derail it because, well, it's Donald Trump. They don't really care for him to succeed. They actually really want him to fail. And this actually brings me to Michelle Wolf. A very untalented comedian, by the way. There's a footage of her reporting on the poll, which basically asked people, do you want the summit to fail because you hate Trump? And 71% of people in that poll said yes. That's not just the mentality of on the left. It's the mentality of the mainstream media, because all they do is slander the president and a lot of the policy agendas that he tries to enact, like the border wall, for instance. I don't recall who this person was or who she worked for, but she said something along the lines that illegal immigrant children being taken from their parents is reminiscent to Nazi Germany. One, that's not true, because I'm pretty sure that the Nazis would actually do far worse. In fact, it's very well shown, especially in concentration camps like in Auschwitz or Sachsenhausen and Tbilisi. Those camps would call for their extermination and basically dehumanization. Second, this is misinformation, because ICE has responsibilities and sorts of rules and regulations that that determine what they have to do when it comes to deportation. Basically, they have to see whether or not a person illegally entered the country, if they have a criminal record, and then they deport them to their home country or just simply nearby Mexico. I don't know much about ICE and their entire policy. I am completely admit that. But again, this shows a complete misinformation over the issue of illegal immigration. Basically, it's the leftists are trying to be good, but the right-wing media are bigots and assholes that just want to see everybody killed and actually support fascism, like their Führer, Donald Trump. That's basically what they are, and they try to get this mentality to try to bring in more people onto the side of the left's agenda. And it's not just the left's agenda, it's the mainstream agenda as well. Because it's well known that a lot of media outlets, very few exceptions, tend to personally be against Trump. In fact, they regularly report negative coverage against him. I recall that in 2017, there was a poll that estimated that 93% of CNN's coverage on the President of the United States was negative. Completely unfair. Only 7% being positive. Again, it's all trying to be used as a tool for promoting their own agenda and to deframe any opponents they have. Say in the United Kingdom, there's a Tommy Robinson who's out in the street, who was out in the street, publicly decrying against illegal immigration, the refugee crisis, the migrant crisis, and a lot of the government's policies in the United Kingdom. Yet, despite trying to be lawful in what he was doing, he just immediately got arrested and was sentenced within 5 hours. I've actually made a video on that, but this is just to prove a bigger point. That the media, including here, is trying to deframe their own opponents. But they don't like it how a lot of people try to expose them for what they are. Complete frauds. Complete frauds. There are so many channels on YouTube that basically expose many of these mainstream media outlets, because, well, it's kind of obvious that they definitely have a certain political view, and they're basically trying to gain as much viewership as possible. I mean, after all, they are a company, which is not a bad thing. They're just trying to make money, which I would have to respect that. But still, they're intentionally slandering and sending out misinformation. That's a big problem, and people in the alternative media and other sources of social media expose them for this. And suddenly, for some reason, the mainstream media says that this is deframing them, and they want pity, because, well, they're trying to report on this situation. Plus, they also use this idea of the First Amendment as a defense to deframe people. First off, the First Amendment does not protect against misinformation. In fact, it actually does the complete opposite. Usually, you have ideas that are truthful, like to report on the situation. Yet there are laws basically talking about that basically allow you to sue media companies for possible fraud when it comes to handling of information. Second, and this is definitely a big one as part of the First Amendment, the First Amendment does not protect you from consequences. It absolutely doesn't. Even if you are allowed to get away from all this misinformation, you are still going to receive a large amount of criticism and flack against it. And this is definitely going to bite you in the ass. That is definitely going to happen, whether or not you were right on the first issue that I just mentioned. Just because you're allowed to spread false information does not mean you cannot get away with it. And considering that, I'm fine with that, because it's funny because the media constantly deframes, tries to quote unquote expose their opponents for being neo-Nazis or that sort of thing, and yet when the same thing happens to them, they go cry and whine about it. In fact, in this individual case, this is something more I would see from Jim Acosta. He is the bulldog of CNN, and definitely a complete asshole in every sense of the word. Every time when he tries to get an interview on Trump, he asks a negative question about him, to try to get the president to answer it. Just try to quote unquote expose him and to deframe him and his entire presidency from achieving any good means. Of course, that has never come without the consequences, especially from the American public, because obviously he's gotten a lot of flack from us as well. But again, he still constantly tries to say that this is my First Amendment right, this is my my job to expose extreme ideologies, that sort of thing. Yeah, but you're not handling information real incredibly well. All you're just doing is taking that information, twisting it, just to suit your own narrative. That is the problem with a lot of media these days, and they are being called out on it. And this is definitely making a big change when it comes to politics in the United States, especially when it comes to policies in general with how Trump is doing. Like I said before, with the Trump-Kim summit in Singapore, he's actually been a lot more in a positive, gotten a lot more positive reception, or because of his accomplishments in the summit. Yet a lot of the media tried to paint the opposite. At this point, I would think that a lot of the American public would actually side with President Trump when it comes to this issue, because, well, there's a possibility of peace. I mean, after all, this didn't happen before, and considering with the misinformation and the yellow journalists and that, a lot of mainstream media outlets continually dish out from their mouths. It's just gonna change demographics across the entire United States. In fact, I think it's gonna move people a lot more to the right instead of to the left, as they hope they would be. Just because they are in control of the media does not mean that they can get away with everything, and they can get away with mishandling with certain events that are going around the world, especially when it comes to politics. Again, I've made this very clear, talking about the border wall and, of course, the Trump-Kim summit. All of this is just, though, a means to just advance their own political agenda. That is all it is. They don't care about anything else. The only thing that will make them care is when their viewership drops to 0. I'm pretty sure that's the only case. Although I'm pretty sure that I'm maybe they would still continue on with that despite their low viewership numbers. I mean, they're still spewing bullshit as I'm speaking. So I don't know. Maybe if as long as the media is being exposed, there could be a resulting change. We could have better information services, and finally, these mainstream media outlets, which obviously present a political agenda, will finally be crushed. Maybe that will happen. My name is Noah Meehan of The Arc Truth. Please post your comments down below. I would love to read them. Subscribe to this channel and like this video and share with others.